I'm Olivia Evans, 31, and the emptiness in that tiny velvet box destroyed my world more completely than when I lost Michael last year. The $590,000 diamond ring, the last thing my fiancé designed before cancer took him, was gone. My mother's voice floated from downstairs, casual as discussing the weather. We sold it to fund Amber's healing retreat in Bali. She really needed it after her breakup. I didn't scream. I just stood there, the empty box cradled in my trembling hands, the magnitude of betrayal crystallizing in my chest. Before I tell you what happened after I found my empty ring box, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like if you've ever had something precious taken from you, and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and unexpected strength. Michael Anderson walked into my life during our second year at New York School of Visual Arts. His fingers perpetually stained with graphite from sketching jewelry designs late into the night, his portfolio captivated me first. The intricate settings and unconventional gemstone pairings, revealing a mind that saw beauty where others saw only raw materials. We bonded over coffee and conversations about vintage Cartier pieces, arguments about whether tension settings were overrated, and eventually, tentative kisses between display cases at the jewelry exhibition where we both had pieces featured. Michael possessed an intuitive understanding of how metals and stones could tell stories, and under his gentle guidance, my own designs evolved from competent to compelling. He'd watch me work, suggesting minor adjustments that somehow transformed everything. His voice soft but certain. Trust the material, Liv. It knows what it wants to become. We moved into a tiny Brooklyn apartment with barely enough space for a kitchen table, converting half our living room into a shared design studio. Those 3 years were filled with creativity, laughter, and plans for the future studio we'd open together. Michael's reputation grew steadily. By 30, his custom pieces commanded waiting lists and premium prices. I remember the snowy evening he returned from delivering a commission to a Silicon Valley executive, his eyes bright with excitement as he described the seaside workshop we'd have someday. That same night, he complained about persistent headaches. 6 weeks later, we received the diagnosis: stage 4 glioblastoma, an aggressive brain tumor with devastatingly low survival rates. Michael faced his mortality with the same thoughtful precision he applied to his designs, organizing his business affairs and ensuring I would have legal rights to our shared design concepts. Between treatments that left him exhausted, he insisted on completing one final project. "I need to make you something that matters, Liv," he whispered one night, his once steady hands now thin and trembling against the hospital sheets. Despite his doctor's concerns about conserving energy, Michael worked whenever he could hold a pencil, sketching variations of a ring specifically designed for my hand. The design evolved daily, incorporating elements that represented our journey. Tiny sapphires, the exact blue of my eyes, rose gold because I once mentioned it, complemented my skin tone, and an unusual diamond setting that caught light from multiple angles, creating an interior fire that seemed to shift and dance. He collaborated with his former mentor, master jeweler Anton Keller, sending detailed instructions from his hospital bed. When the tumor affected his vision, he described what he wanted in painstaking detail, while Anton sketched. The central stone alone took weeks to locate, a flawless 5-carat diamond with exceptional clarity. "This isn't just an engagement ring," Michael explained as Anton brought progress photos. "It's the physical manifestation of everything we would have created together." 2 weeks before he died, when the medication could barely control his pain, Michael asked the nurses to help him sit upright. Anton arrived, carrying a small wooden box lined with midnight blue velvet. Inside lay the completed ring, more breathtaking than the sketches had suggested. Michael took my hand, his touch feather-light. "Olivia Evans, I may not have the future to give you, but I've put every moment we might have had into this ring. Will you marry me in the time we have left?" We exchanged vows in that hospital room, with a handful of witnesses and a justice of the peace, who agreed to expedite the paperwork. Michael slipped the ring onto my finger, his voice barely audible. "This ring is ours, forever intertwined, beautiful, and unbreakable." The appraisal paperwork arrived 3 days after his funeral, valuing the ring at $590,000, far more than I'd imagined. The amount seemed almost obscene in its excess, yet perfectly aligned with Michael's desire to leave me something extraordinary. In the months following his death, I often found myself twisting the ring on my finger during difficult moments, drawing comfort from its solid presence. I couldn't bring myself to create new designs, but I began teaching at our alma mater, sharing Michael's techniques with students. The approaching 1-year anniversary of his death loomed like a physical weight, unable to face our apartment alone. On that day, I decided to spend the weekend at my parents' suburban Connecticut home, seeking the comfort of family during what would surely be an emotional milestone. I packed carefully, including the ring box for safekeeping while swimming in their pool, never imagining it would become the centerpiece of a betrayal I couldn't have conceived, even in my grief-stricken nightmares. The familiar scent of my mother's gardenia perfume greeted me when I arrived at my childhood home. But something about her embrace felt performative, a beat too long and slightly too tight. My father hovered at the periphery, his normally booming voice subdued as he commented on the pleasant spring weather and asked perfunctory questions about my drive from the city. The kitchen gleamed with rarely used copper pots and a fresh flower arrangement that seemed excessive for just a family weekend. "We've prepared your old room," my mother said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she led me upstairs. "Though Amber's things are in the guest closet, since she's been staying here between apartments." I settled in, placing the ring box in the back of the drawer where I'd kept childhood treasures. A habit of security, rather than necessity in my parents' home. At dinner, the conversation maintained a strange superficiality, my parents exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking, repeatedly steering topics toward inconsequential matters. Whenever I mentioned Michael or the upcoming anniversary, my sister's absence was explained with vague references to important self-care commitments. Unusual given Amber's typical insistence on being the center of attention during family gatherings. The unnatural cheerfulness continued through breakfast. The following morning, my mother chattering about neighbors and garden club politics, while my father remained uncharacteristically engrossed in his newspaper, when they simultaneously announced errands that couldn't wait, leaving me alone in the house. I felt oddly relieved by their absence. I decided to take advantage of the solitude by changing into swimwear for a few peaceful laps in the pool, reaching for the ring box to secure the precious piece before getting wet. The drawer slid open smoothly, but when my fingers touched the velvet case, something felt wrong. The familiar weight was missing. Inside, the custom-fitted indentation that had cradled the ring lay empty, the midnight blue fabric undisturbed, except for the absence of what should have been there. My breath caught as I searched the surrounding area, checking under papers and nearby drawers, before a cold realization settled in my stomach. When my mother returned, I stood in the kitchen, holding the empty box, my voice steadier than I felt. "Where is it?" She placed her shopping bags on the counter without turning, her shoulders tensing slightly, before she pivoted with an expression of practiced concern. "Oh, the ring. We sold it last month." The casual tone matched one she might use to mention donating old clothes. Amber's been going through such a difficult time after Jason left her. She needed a proper healing journey. My mind struggled to process her words as she continued speaking, explaining how they'd found a jewelry dealer who offered cash, though not quite what it was worth, but enough for what Amber needed. The pieces connected slowly. My sister's excessive emotional reaction to a 6-month relationship ending, her parents' solution involving a luxury wellness retreat in Bali at a resort that catered to celebrities and tech billionaires. The full package cost just over $500,000. My mother explained, arranging oranges in a fruit bowl. The program combines ancient healing traditions with modern therapeutic approaches. 6 weeks of intensive spiritual work. She really needed this, Olivia. My father arrived home during this revelation, his reaction to my confrontation equally dismissive. "It's just a ring, sweetheart. You can make another one with your skills," he said, pouring himself a scotch. Despite the early hour, Amber doesn't have your talents or independence. She requires different kinds of support. Their words revealed a pattern I'd normalized throughout. Childhood. Amber's needs always prioritized. Her emotional demands treated as emergencies, while my self-sufficiency was taken for granted. I pressed for details about the sale, learning they'd never consulted me, never contacted Michael's parents, who would have purchased it in a heartbeat to preserve their son's final creation, never considered that its value transcended the materials and craftsmanship. "You've always been practical, Olivia," my father said, his tone suggesting this was a compliment. "We knew you'd understand once you saw how much good came from this for your sister." I didn't scream or throw things, as the younger version of myself might have done. Instead, I felt a profound disconnect. As though watching a scenario unfold from a distance, I excused myself quietly, returning to my childhood bedroom, where familiar surroundings now seemed like artifacts from a stranger's life. Through the window, I could see my mother making another phone call in the garden, gesturing emphatically, likely sharing her version of my overreaction with her social circle. The betrayal crystallized not in the loss of the ring itself, but in the realization that my parents had never truly seen me or valued what mattered most in my life. Sleep eluded me that night as memories surfaced with new clarity. Amber's dance recital prioritized over my art competition. My college fund, partially redirected to finance my sister's gap year in Europe after she failed her freshman courses. My parents missing my graduation dinner because Amber had called in tears over a roommate dispute. The pattern extended to Michael as well, with my parents maintaining polite distance during his illness, making brief hospital visits that felt obligatory while devoting weeks to supporting Amber through a minor surgical procedure the same year. Around 3 in the morning, I descended to the kitchen for water, freezing on the stairs when I heard my parents' voices. "She's being dramatic again," my mother sighed. "It's just jewelry, and she can make her own if it matters that much. I don't understand the attachment to material things." My father's response cut deeper. Michael always encouraged her impractical artistic tendencies. Maybe this will finally push her toward that management position at Turner's that her former classmate mentioned. Their fundamental misunderstanding of my relationship with Michael and my career choices revealed a chasm that had always existed beneath the surface of our family dynamics. Morning brought a video call from Amber, streamed on the living room television, so we could all admire her surroundings. My sister's face filled the screen, tanned and relaxed, as she panned her phone to showcase a private villa with infinity in pool overlooking terraced rice fields. "The sunrise meditation sessions are transformative," she gushed, adjusting her designer sunglasses while a white uniformed staff member delivered a coconut drink garnished with orchids. "And my soul guide says my aura is finally cleansing of toxic energies." Throughout the 30-minute call, she never acknowledged the source of her luxury experience. Instead, detailing exclusive treatments involving rare mountain herbs and private consultations with visiting spiritual leaders, my parents watched with expressions of adoring approval, my father occasionally commenting, "See how much good this is doing her," as though I should feel gratified by my involuntary contribution. After the call, my mother mentioned casually that they'd accepted $300,000 for the ring, believing the dealer's assurance this represented fair market value for a used engagement piece. A quick online search revealed they'd received barely half its worth, the knowledge twisting like a knife that they hadn't even secured full value for their betrayal. When I attempted to explain the ring's emotional significance, my mother patted my hand with the condescending gentleness reserved for unreasonable children. "You need to move on anyway, dear. It's been a year, and clinging to these reminders isn't healthy." My father nodded agreement, adding, "Your attachment to material objects concerns us. Michael wouldn't want you fixated on things rather than memories." Their dismissal of my grief as some kind of character defect ignited a simmering anger beneath my shock. That evening, my parents insisted on dinner with longtime family friends, an obvious attempt to prevent further private conversation about the ring. I participated mechanically in the social ritual, smiling at appropriate moments while feeling utterly disconnected from the people who raised me. The Phillipses, who had known me since childhood, noticed something amiss despite my efforts. "Where's that stunning ring Michael designed? I was hoping to see it up close." Ellen Phillips asked innocently over dessert. The momentary silence at the table confirmed my suspicion that my parents had hidden their actions from their social circle, aware on some level that others would recognize the transgression. My father recovered quickly, steering conversation toward Amber's spiritual journey without directly addressing the question. Later that night, I overheard him on the phone with the Phillipses, constructing a narrative about how I had decided the ring was too painful to keep, presenting the sale as my choice and their support of it as parental guidance. The deliberate rewriting of events to preserve their social standing revealed yet another layer of betrayal. By the third day of my visit, the emotional weight had become nearly unbearable. I discovered through carefully casual questioning that my parents had used the remaining money from the ring sale to fund a new business venture for Amber, a wellness consultancy she planned to launch upon returning from Bali. "She's found her calling," my mother explained enthusiastically, showing me a logo design that had cost thousands to create. The experience in Bali is giving her the credentials she needs to guide others toward authentic healing. The investment in my sister's untested business idea, based on a 6-week retreat purchased with my stolen inheritance, represented a final confirmation that my place in the family had always been secondary. When I pointed out that Amber had no qualifications, training, or experience in wellness or business, my father dismissed my concerns. "Not everyone needs conventional credentials, Olivia. Some people have natural gifts for helping others." The contrast with their persistent questioning of my viable career in jewelry design highlighted the double standard that had always existed between us sisters. The weekend I had sought for comfort became an endurance test, each hour revealing new dimensions of my family's betrayal. Sunday brunch brought an expanded gathering, including my aunt and uncle, my mother's college friend, and neighbors who had known us for decades. The conversation flowed around me as I maintained a facade of normalcy, responding to questions about my teaching position and design work with practiced responses that required minimal engagement. The carefully constructed veneer cracked when my uncle innocently mentioned Michael. "Your young man had extraordinary talent," he said kindly. "That ring he created was a masterpiece." Janet showed us pictures last Christmas. My mother's wineglass paused midway to her lips, her eyes darting nervously to my father as uncomfortable silence descended. My aunt, unaware of the tension, continued enthusiastically, "Oh yes, such a unique design. I was telling my jeweler about it just last week. He said pieces like that appreciate significantly over time, especially with the provenance of being the designer's final work." The growing discomfort around the table suggested that some guests were now registering my parents' averted gazes and forced smiles. Before anyone could change the subject, the front door burst open with theatrical timing, revealing Amber in flowing linen resort wear, her entrance perfectly calculated for maximum attention. "Surprise! I finished my journey early because I've reached complete clarity," she announced, accepting embraces and compliments on her radiant energy and transformed presence. My mother's relief at the distraction was palpable as she fussed over my sister's early return, quickly directing conversation toward Amber's experiences. Throughout lunch, my sister dominated the gathering with elaborate stories about shamanic ceremonies and celebrity encounters at the resort, occasionally touching my arm with performative affection while never meeting my eyes directly. "I've never felt so aligned with my true purpose," she declared, standing to formally address our assembled family friends. "Which is why I'm thrilled to announce the launch of Amber Light Wellness, my new holistic consultation practice." My parents beamed with pride as she distributed business cards featuring the expensive logo I'd seen earlier, explaining the comprehensive services she would offer, at rates accessible to those truly committed to transformation. My father rose, champagne flute in hand, to make an announcement that severed whatever tenuous family connection remained. "We're so proud to support Amber's vision with startup funding. The remaining proceeds from Olivia's ring are being invested in a wellness center space in the Westport shopping district." The casual public disclosure of their actions, framed as generous parental support rather than theft, crystallized everything. The gathered friends shifted uncomfortably, several looking toward me, with expressions ranging from confusion to pity. In that moment of public humiliation, I made one final attempt to make my family understand what they had done. That ring was the last thing Michael created before he died, I said quietly, my voice steady, despite the emotional turbulence beneath. It wasn't just jewelry or an investment, it was his legacy, his final expression of love and creativity. My father's response shattered any possibility of reconciliation. We always thought Michael wasn't good enough for you anyway, he stated flatly. All that artistic temperament and impractical career choice. The illness was tragic, of course, but perhaps it's for the best that you're free to find someone more suitable. The breathless silence that followed his words confirmed the shocking inappropriateness, even to their friends. My mother attempted damage control, her practiced social smile strained as she added, "What your father means is that you need to stop living in the past, dear. The ring was just keeping you tethered to grief, instead of moving forward." Amber, perhaps sensing the growing discomfort among the guests, attempted to recenter attention on herself with the cruelest comment of all. "At least my boyfriend is still alive. I mean, I know Jason and I broke up, but at least I have the possibility of reconciliation." In that crystalline moment, looking at these three people who shared my blood, but apparently nothing of my heart, I understood that they saw my grief, not as love, but as weakness. My creativity not as gift, but as flaw. My independence not as strength, but as rejection of their values. Without raising my voice, or creating the scene they clearly expected from dramatic Olivia, I simply placed my napkin beside my plate, rose from the table, and walked upstairs to pack my belongings. The murmur of uncomfortable conversation resumed. Below, my absence barely noted, as Amber launched into another tale of spiritual awakening. Within 20 minutes, I had gathered essential items and slipped out the side door to my car, leaving behind childhood possessions and photographs that suddenly seemed to belong to someone else's life. I drove away from my family home without a backward glance, my disappearance more devastating in its quietness than any confrontation could have been. The dignified exit provided temporary emotional satisfaction, but left me essentially homeless, as I couldn't face returning to the apartment, filled with Michael's designs and our shared dreams. I checked into a modest hotel near my teaching position, the anonymous neutrality of the room, providing strange comfort after the emotional warfare of the weekend. Rather than allowing myself to collapse into grief, I channeled my emotions into methodical action, beginning with a Monday morning appointment with Leah Goldstein, an attorney who specialized in estate matters and property theft. Technically, what they did constitutes conversion of property, she explained after hearing my story. The ring was clearly gifted to you by your fiancé before his death, making it legally yours regardless of its monetary value. The fact that it's worth over $500,000 makes this grand theft in most jurisdictions. Leah's matter-of-fact approach helped transform my personal trauma into a practical problem requiring solution. We developed a two-pronged strategy: legal action against my parents for the theft, and simultaneous efforts to locate and recover the ring itself. Michael's original design sketches, safely stored in our apartment, provided crucial documentation of the ring's provenance and unique characteristics. Former colleagues from his workshop volunteered assistance when they learned what happened, outraged that his final creation had been sold without consent. Through industry connections, we identified the dealer who purchased the ring, a semi-legitimate businessman named Victor Ramos, who operated on the margins of the jewelry world, known for not asking too many questions about item origins. My first breakthrough came when Josie, Michael's former assistant, recognized the ring in an Instagram post from Ramos's account. Displayed among other acquisition highlights, the image showed my ring photographed against black velvet. The caption, praising its exceptional craftsmanship, without mentioning the designer. A private investigator, hired by Leah, confirmed that Ramos had quickly resold the piece to Lambert Jewelry Collection, a prestigious private holding company that acquired exceptional pieces for investment purposes. The emotional support I'd sought from my parents ironically came instead from Michael's family, who reacted to the theft with appropriate horror and immediate offers of assistance. His father, James, a retired corporate attorney, helped finance the legal proceedings, while his mother, Catherine, provided emotional support during my lowest moments. "Michael would be proud of how you're handling this," she told me during a lunch meeting where we discussed strategy. Not with vengeance, but with the same thoughtful determination he brought to his most challenging designs. The contrast between my biological family's dismissal and my almost in-laws' unconditional support clarified what genuine family connections should feel like. With mounting legal pressure, Ramos eventually admitted purchasing the ring from my parents, though he claimed ignorance about its significance or true value. His records confirmed the $300,000 purchase price, substantially below market value, even for a conventional diamond ring of that size, suggesting my parents had been either incredibly naive or deliberately hasty in the transaction. Meanwhile, Lambert Collection refused initial requests to return or resell the ring, their representatives citing good faith purchase protections and their substantial investment. Their position softened somewhat when jewelry industry publications began covering the story. Several prominent designers expressing outrage over the treatment of Michael's final work, rather than retreat into victim status. I channeled my creative energy into establishing an independent business, distinct from the teaching position that barely covered my expenses, using skills Michael had taught me and connections he had nurtured. I launched a specialized design service, creating memorial and commemorative jewelry for clients processing grief. My first commissions came from people who had read about my situation online, seeking pieces that would honor their own lost loved ones. The work provided not just financial stability, but emotional healing, as I transformed others' love and loss into tangible beauty, just as Michael had done for me. Each small victory in building my business became a step toward reclaiming agency after the profound violation of trust. When a leading industry magazine requested an interview about my emerging specialty in memorial jewelry, I spoke openly about my experience, without naming my family directly, but making the circumstances clear enough that accountability would follow. Beauty from brokenness isn't just my design philosophy, I explained to the journalist. It's become my life practice. The published article included photographs of Michael's sketches and completed works, establishing his legacy while solidifying my professional identity, independent from my family name. 6 months after discovering the empty ring box, I made the decision to legally change my surname, adopting Michael's last name, not just as a tribute to him, but as recognition that family can be chosen, rather than merely inherited. The paperwork finalizing this change arrived the same week as notification that Lambert Collection had agreed to negotiations regarding the ring's future, the first tangible evidence that resolution might be possible. 1 year after the theft, my business Legacy Designs by Olivia Anderson occupied a light-filled studio in Brooklyn, with 3 apprentices learning the techniques Michael had once taught me. The waiting list for commissions extended 6 months, each piece created with the same attention to emotional significance that had defined Michael's work. Architectural Digest featured our studio in a special issue on artisanal craftsmanship. The photographer, capturing images of Michael's original sketches, displayed prominently on walls alongside my new designs. The magazine's elegant spread represented public validation of everything my parents had dismissed as impractical artistic tendencies. Financial independence provided freedom to decline the occasional overtures that began arriving from my mother via third parties, typically mutual acquaintances, who happened to mention that my parents were concerned about my well-being. These awkward attempts at reconciliation never acknowledged the theft or expressed genuine remorse, instead framing our estrangement as an overreaction to a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Amber Light Wellness struggled from inception. Its vague services and my sister's lack of qualifications quickly becoming apparent to potential clients. The expensive Westport storefront remained mostly empty, despite elaborate grand opening celebrations covered in local social pages. My parents' investment in the venture doubled, then tripled, as initial funding disappeared into designer furnishings and promotional events yielding few paying customers. Through industry connections, I learned that my parents had approached several lending institutions using their home as collateral, their financial situation increasingly precarious as they poured resources into sustaining my sister's business fantasy. The reality of my complete disconnection apparently dawned slowly for them, starting with the returned birthday card marked addressee unknown, and culminating in the cease and desist letter from Leah when they attempted to use my name and story in promotional materials for Amber's business. Their growing desperation became evident when my father reached out to Michael's parents, apparently hoping they might serve as intermediaries. James Anderson, instead, used the opportunity to inform him that he and Catherine had become my business investors and surrogate family. Their support, both emotional and practical, as my company expanded. The ripple effects of truth extended through our extended family and social circle, with several relatives reaching out privately to express support and share similar experiences of favoritism they had observed throughout my childhood. My Aunt Julia, my mother's sister, called unexpectedly one evening to apologize for not intervening sooner in the family dynamics she had witnessed for decades. "Your mother created an unhealthy situation that none of us challenged effectively," she acknowledged. "Watching you establish this beautiful business and life on your own terms has been inspiring to all of us." The most unexpected consequence emerged 8 months after my departure, when local gossip reached me through former neighbors. My parents had been quietly excluded from several social organizations and charity boards that formed the foundation of their community standing. The circumstances of the ring theft, initially contained within our immediate circle, had gradually permeated their social world, creating uncomfortable questions they couldn't answer without admitting their actions. My sister's brush with actual consequences began when our parents finally imposed boundaries on further business funding, forcing her to take an entry-level position at a friend's public relations firm. According to mutual acquaintances, Amber's experience of regular working hours and performance expectations created a crisis of identity for someone who had built her self-image on being exceptional without effort. Her social media presence, once filled with inspirational quotes and wellness advice, fell silent for months before re-emerging with conspicuously humble content about learning and growing through new experiences. The transformation in my own life extended beyond career success to personal healing. Regular sessions with a grief counselor helped me process not just Michael's death, but the compound loss of my family relationships and the precious symbol he had created. The therapist's observation proved particularly insightful. The ring represented continuity between past and future. Its loss forced you to build that bridge differently, through your work and new connections. This perspective helped me recognize that while the physical ring remained important, my creative practice had become the true living extension of Michael's legacy, touching lives through objects that carried meaning beyond their material value. The most meaningful outcome of this painful journey emerged not through legal victories, but through the Michael Anderson Foundation for Emerging Jewelry Artists. Established with profits from my growing business, the foundation provided scholarships and mentoring to talented students facing financial barriers to education in the field, with particular emphasis on those creating pieces with emotional and memorial significance. The first cohort of scholarship recipients included a young woman creating jewelry, incorporating cremation ashes, a refugee crafting pieces that preserved cultural heritage techniques, and a former combat medic translating trauma into healing objects. Witnessing their growth validated my conviction that creativity could transform even the most profound losses into connection and meaning. The journey through grief evolved through my work facilitating others' healing processes. Weekly, support groups for bereaved individuals creating memorial pieces in our studio became a cornerstone of our practice. Participants often commenting that the combination of creative expression and community understanding provided comfort conventional therapy hadn't offered. When words fail, our hands can still speak became our unofficial motto, painted above the studio entrance in Michael's favorite shade of blue. The ring itself found unexpected resolution through Lambert Collections director Anthony Pearson, who contacted me directly after learning the full story from industry colleagues. We acquire pieces for their artistic and investment value, he explained during our meeting in his Manhattan office, but we also recognize that certain objects carry profound personal significance beyond their market price. The collection's unprecedented proposal acknowledged both emotional and artistic considerations. They would commission me to create an exact replica of Michael's original design, using his sketches and my intimate knowledge of the piece. The original ring would remain in their collection, with a portion of its exhibition and appreciation value dedicated to funding the foundation in perpetuity. Creating the replica became a healing ritual, each stage of craftsmanship reconnecting me with Michael's design process and artistic vision. Working alongside Anton Keller, who had helped Michael complete the original, provided a profound sense of continuity and mentorship. Michael lives in your hands now, Anton observed as we set the central stone. Your technical skills have surpassed even his expectations. The completion of the replica coincided with a letter arriving from an unexpected source. My sister's handwriting on the envelope triggered immediate tension. But the contents revealed a different Amber than I had known. I've spent a year justifying what happened, telling myself I deserved that retreat and the opportunities it supposedly created. The business failure forced me to confront reality in ways I'd always been protected from. I understand now that what happened to you was unforgivable, and my participation in it reflects a lifetime of privilege I never questioned. I don't expect forgiveness, but you deserve an acknowledgement of the harm done. The letter concluded with confirmation that she had begun therapy to address the patterns established in our childhood, recognizing how they had shaped her inability to function independently or develop genuine empathy. Her words offered no excuse or request for reconciliation, simply accountability without expectation, perhaps the most mature communication we had ever shared. The Foundation's first anniversary celebration coincided with a gallery exhibition of Michael's original designs alongside my new work, the event drawing industry leaders and design publications. Standing before the gathered attendees, wearing the replica ring that carried both Michael's vision and my own resilience, I spoke about transformation rather than loss. The most valuable things we create aren't the objects themselves, but the connections they represent, I explained. Michael understood that jewelry marks our most significant moments, not because of precious metals or stones, but because it crystallizes emotions into forms we can carry through life. The relationships that emerged from this difficult journey provided unexpected richness, from deepened bonds with Michael's family to new creative partnerships with artists sharing similar values. I even found space for new love with Daniel, a sculptor who approached my work with respectful admiration rather than competition, his understanding of grief and creativity complementing my own journey. Perhaps the most profound lesson emerged, not from the primary loss of the ring, but from the secondary discovery of how conditional my family's love had always been. The experience clarified the distinction between biological connection and genuine emotional bonds, liberating me from obligation to relationships that had always required diminishing myself. The ring's theft, while traumatic, ultimately freed me from toxic family dynamics I might otherwise have accommodated indefinitely, revealing capacity for resilience I hadn't recognized in myself. The original ring now tours with prestigious jewelry exhibitions, its placard describing both its technical brilliance and the personal story behind its creation, ensuring Michael's legacy extends beyond our relationship into the wider world of design. Meanwhile, its replica adorns my hand as I create new pieces that help others hold tangible representations of their most profound connections. What would you do if someone sold something irreplaceable from your life? Could you transform that loss into something meaningful, or would you fight to reclaim what was taken? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of finding strength in unexpected places. And if you know someone struggling with family betrayal or grief, sharing this might help them feel less alone. Thank you for witnessing my story. And remember that sometimes our most beautiful creations emerge from our deepest wounds.